Welcome to Fitness and Consciousness. I'm your host, Ryan Hadley, and my guest today is Richie Todd. He's a 4th degree black belt in karate, and we train with each other once a week here at White Pine. That's where we're recording now. Thanks for being on the show, Richie.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
So what got you into karate? Did I stump you there?
No, it's just fun. You like accentuated the E because you know you're saying it wrong. But, I mean, we all do. If you say it properly, people are like, what? No, I started karate when I was 8 years old. My sensei came to my grade school, and she basically showed up and told the people there that she wanted to run an after-school program. And, man, I was like, oh, holy shit, we got people doing fighting stuff in my school, and I need to do some of that because I was a rowdy little 8-year-old. And then I just never got out of it. My older brother did karate. He got his junior black belt, his junior showdown when he was, 13 or so, but he was 8 years older than me, so had some motivation there to learn some stuff. And so I trained and trained and trained. I don't know, I started training at another dojo in our style when I was like 14. I was 14. I was there for 5 years, from 14 to 19.
Speak a little more on that.
And I was sort of going a little bit crazy, but I was in the dojo like 20 or 25 hours a week, something ridiculous like that.
That was at what age?
From 14 to 19, I think. Like 5 years when I was going to school full time and going to the dojo. Not quite full time.
Yeah. What style of karate is it?
I do a weird one called Shurei Goju-ryu. I guess the best way to describe it is an American blend of Okinawan systems. We do kata from Shorin-ryu, from Goju-ryu. That's like the biggest influence. From Shiri-ryu, which is the American part, which comes from Master Robert Trias. Those are some of the books we do kata that he did and recorded in some of the books that he wrote. And then we also do like we call them Pinan. We use the Okinawan name, but we call them Heian from from Shotokan. We do them almost exactly the same way the Shotokan people do. We do them the more Japanese way, even though it's the Okinawan name that we use.
Yeah, when you and I first started training, I was showing you some Jujitsu, and then you were going to show me some of the karate that you do. And I had trained with a lot of other karate guys and was, I guess, less than impressed with most of the, even like black belts and stuff that I trained with. I wasn't very, just not really impressed with what they were doing. And then when I trained with you, you were like really good. It was explosive and like practical. Other guys might be like explosive, but like what can you actually do to somebody? Because it kind of reminded me of that shirt that says like your kung fu doesn't work here, and like, but yours did. And so like, what is that like separation there? Like why? How did that happen? Where like so much of the karate became unpractical or impractical rather, but what you do is actually working. How did you manage to get there?
Okay. Man, you just asked me like 5 questions. There's a lot of reasons why karate is where it is today. But I mean, the first thing is, man, there's a lot of bullshit karate out there. There's a lot of people that, okay, we have to back up. So karate was developed in Okinawa by, we'll say, predominantly, sort of came to be known-ish as what we would recognize as karate, even though they didn't call it that then. We'll say like early to middle 1700s, right? And there were Chinese influences, there were Japanese influences, and there were also like Okinawan indigenous influences for martial arts, right? Because you always have, pretty much anywhere in the world, you have some sort of grappling, some sort of striking, and some sort of weapons work. In Okinawa, they call it the kobudo, right, or the bukijutsu, which is the weapons work. The hand art, like the old wrestling that they had, they would call like tegumi, which is the same words as kumite, except in the reverse order, which means something like meeting hands, right? Is what that's close. It's not quite right, but it's something like that. And the thing is like during like karate's heyday, we'll say early 1900s, where it wasn't sort of practiced as much in secret. It wasn't on the low key anymore, because it was for a long time. When those masters started to be able to sort of come out and train people a little more openly, like the heian kata or the pinan kata, as they're called in Okinawan, were developed sort of as a synthesis of what karate was at the time, which was a martial art that was for self-defense, right? Civilian self-defense. It wasn't a military art. It wasn't something that was just, like Jujitsu was developed, we'll say, like the 13th century as an unarmed solution to, like if you lost your sword or you got grounded in a fight or whatever because you were a samurai and you had time to train and to do those things. This isn't for that. In Okinawa, the populace was largely disarmed. People didn't have access to steel weapons or to firearms or any of those things. There were several weapons bans, and those influenced part of, I'm sure they did, some of the techniques and tactics that you find in karate, even to this day. And man, I'm getting all off track. But
so it was it.
So my point in all of this is, karate was about civilian self-defense. It was about real fighting, right? And the pinan kata were developed to sort of embody some of those principles and tactics, sort of as karate was at the time. And all of those guys knew that what they were doing was for self-defense and for fighting. It was for dealing with other humans that are trying to inflict violence upon you, right? And so they did the Hojo Undo, right? Their supplementary training, as they called it, right? Their strength and conditioning, basically, right? And their hard body stuff, their kote kitai, banging their forearms and their shins and stuff into things, typically hard objects and their friends, so that they could be tougher than the other guy when they tried to hit them. They were really strong, that did all the sorts of things that you would do today. You pick up heavy objects, you run, you get some cardio, you get some flexibility, and then you train, right?
So were they fighting the samurai?
No. I mean, I'm sure that there was some of that happened, but no, I mean, there just isn't. It's not like America today where we've got, there's sort of a little bit of violence everywhere. I think a lot of places are like that, even though people don't like to talk about it. what it's not like it's a thing that you use every day, right? If you're having to use your karate for real stuff every day, something's gone pretty wrong in your society.
So like,
anyway,
when I train with Blake Bruning, he talks about there's like protection martial arts, and then there's perfection martial arts. So like and he's just really, really good. So if you want to like be like Thai boxing, he can do that. Western boxing, he can do that. Kali, he can do that. He can do all these different styles. But then when you start talking about like real self-defense stuff, then it's different. The gloves come off, and then he's doing something else. So did like karate have that same thing where it went from, yeah, we are fighting all the time. You never know when we're going to get attacked. And then did it go to that thing like, all right, we're probably not going to be getting in fights. We may go our whole life without getting in a fight. Here's some self-defense, but this is more about like developing our character. And
somewhere along the line that shift was made. So like there's, I don't remember whose book it was, but there's you see in like some of the old karate books, they didn't have, I say old, I mean, the heyday of karate, like sort of when it was really a booming, when it broke out of Okinawa, got into the Okinawan public school system, smashed out of Okinawa and made it to mainland Japan, and then from there spread all over the world. That's like 1920s to 1940s. That period of time. Maybe 1910s, we'll say. And in the early books, they had like a front kick and a side kick, right? And that's what was written down as like the kicks, because you can use those close in on somebody who's, trying to pick you up and slam you down, or grabbing your shirt because they're going to knee you or yank you all over the place, or, it doesn't quite apply then because we didn't have cars, but like if somebody's going to grab you and stuff you in the back of a car, that's the sort of stuff that karate was really made to deal with. And so you see front kick, and so you see side kick, and you see lots of low kicks. You don't see lots of high kicks until after World War II, when there was, and it's not that the guys before didn't spar. They did. They didn't do what we would recognize now as like competition kumite. Because like if you look at point karate now, not to shit on point karate because there's some really valuable stuff that you can learn there, but that is not the sort of sparring that the old masters did. There's a picture of, I think, Ken Wamabuni, who's the founder of Shito-ryu, and he's wearing like hockey pads and like some sort of odd leather boxing glove and some other stuff, and then like a baseball, like a catcher's mask, with the big metal cage over his face. He's wearing one of those things because those guys were getting after it. There's no room for point karate in that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that shift happened because, and then I think some of it was also like the spread of it was so fast that you had guys that at some point, I don't think it happened as much back in the day because like, in Japanese culture, you don't even think about teaching something to somebody until you like damn well know your stuff, whereas now you get people on the internet that are like, oh yeah, I've read about 3 books on that. Actually, they probably haven't read books. They've read like 2 BuzzFeed articles and they're like, oh yeah, I'm an expert. And you just didn't have that. So I think some of it was also like the quality control and how and what people were taught and by who. Like Choki Matobu was notorious for going out and picking fights and then going back to the dojo and training accordingly. And finding out, man, that didn't work. I'm going to have to try something else next week. And he had a lot of that going on, and he fell out of favor with some of the other masters at the time because he was like a really rowdy soul. And the other masters were like, we're trying to popularize this thing and not sort of frighten all the new people off from it, maybe you could tone it down a bit. And he was like, nah, we're here for fighting. Then he, eventually old age did mellow him a bit, but,
Yeah, Jiu-Jitsu has a similar kind of thing where after the samurai days, then it was practiced by, like, thugs. Like, this is, like, the Jiu-Jitsu art was for, it was kind of like, that's just for, like, the gangster types. And then when Kano, yeah, you always correct me on my pronunciations.
I had 3 years of Japanese in school, man. It's important.
So when Jigoro Kano said, it's like, no, actually this jiu-jitsu, it's not just for that. And then if I have it right, it was like when Japan was getting unified, instead of having like all these like warring tribes kind of, then they what would you call them? Instead of having all these different groups like fighting with each other, when Japan was like unified, then they wanted like national sports, so like the jitsus became a do. So like karate jitsu became karate do, and then jujitsu became judo.
Yeah,
as like a way of life. This is a way of
So the jitsu tends to, now it's got a lot of implications, but the general idea was, the jutsu is like the I want to say like the
does it literally mean like technique or art?
Yeah, do is like way, it's like the path, whereas jutsu is like the technique,
nothing particularly spiritual about it. It's this is how you kill people.
Yeah, this, so karate jutsu is like, if you say karate jutsu, it's like the empty hand techniques, right? That's like literally what it is. If you say karate do, it's like the way of the empty hand, right? And it gets that little bit more elaborate interpretation to it. If you have like the Okinawan Bukijutsu, the Okinawan Bukijutsu is like, this is the Okinawan weapon stuff. Like, that's what this is. This is the Okinawan weapon techniques. Whereas Kobudo is like the old martial things, the old martial way, and so it just has some of that different interpretation. I think that all the jutsu people and the do people should I really think that they should get along better, because at the end of the day, we're all doing the same stuff. Nobody that does jiu-jitsu says that they're not there to also just make themselves better. Yeah, in jiu-jitsu, you get to choke the snot out of your friends and have a great time doing it, but you're also doing, like, you start kind of getting good at jiu-jitsu, and not that I have any idea what that's like, but when you sort of get good at your martial art, and you have fewer demons, or at least you're better at fighting with them, right?
Yeah, that's the thing I say. Your greatest opponent is yourself, and learning how to, handle someone else. You kind of have to learn how to handle yourself first. Like the wild man fighting might do good against the yellow belts and maybe green belts, but he's gonna have a lot harder time with the black belt. And like,
once you start getting into that like blue, brown, purple, or blue, purple, brown range, you should be a real handful for most people. You really should be. That's something else that's gotten lost in karate, man. In jiu-jitsu, the standards for like what it takes to get your blue belt, is across the board pretty strict. Like if you're gonna get your blue belt in jits, it's a serious thing. It's 2 to 3 year proposition, right? And that's like you training a couple times a week and really knowing your stuff. But somewhere along the way in karate, it's just we used to do like judo did back in the day. It was like you were a Q rank or you were a Dan rank, and at some point, okay, we had white and black belts, and then the various other colors were introduced in between there. And if you've got 10 belts between your Mukyu, your white belt, and your Shodan, versus having 5 belts, Now each belt matters a little bit less, right? And there's more blurring of the lines. I think, there's some of that. If you're doing jiu-jitsu and you go white, blue, purple, brown, black, okay, you've got 4 Q ranks there, right? If you're doing karate, and a fairly standard sort of way is that you go, isn't how we do it in our style, but I say it's probably the most predominant way, is that you go white, yellow, orange, and then green or blue in either order, then purple, then brown, and then black. Right? So now you've got those extra colors. Those are extra steps, So you might say, I say extra steps, I mean, now the line gets changed a little bit for okay, well, we had 3 belts that we had to do before we got our blue belt. Well, Jiu-Jitsu just handles that with stripes, Each stripe in Jiu-Jitsu is almost like a promotion in itself, I mean, it is, right? You're like, that's why you hear, or I've heard Jiu-Jitsu guys say yeah, I'm a blue belt with my 2nd stripe. Well, it's because those stripes matter.
Yeah, for sure. The original jiu-jitsu school I went to was the Japanese style, so it was different than the Brazilian colors, but it was still white, yellow, green, brown. And then you go to your EQ, you start wearing your, I think it's how you would pronounce it, but you stop wearing a belt and you start wearing the hakama. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you get your black belt. So that hakama is your, if you don't know what that is, it's what they would wear in Aikido. But the old jiu-jitsu guys used to wear those too.
Yep.
So it was this symbol of, if you go into the traditional school and you see that, you're right away, something's different. They're sitting in seiza. They have, everything is very orderly, very disciplined. There's a lot of rules that if you go in there, even if you're very respectful, you're going to be breaking all kinds of rules that you just don't know. You might step over somebody's sword. What's the big deal? Well, it's a huge deal. You just don't do that. But you don't know unless somebody tells you. And then there's all these little etiquette things. So the way I was kind of brought up in jiu-jitsu, and I trained with Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys also, and I saw that there was a lot less etiquette. I mean, there was still a lot of respect. Of course, you're gonna respect everyone, but it's just different. So, and I see it. I think the Japanese way I think it teaches you something that takes a long time to learn. And so the Brazilian has its advantages also, which we can get into. But so you were also doing, you said you were taking Kali?
Yeah, so I went through a period of time where I don't want to say, I want to say a bunch, but only because I had a good background in my karate that lets me learn some of the other stuff fairly quickly, right? When you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. So
Musashi.
Yeah, exactly. That man knew what was up. But
I used to read Musashi stories to my kids at bedtime.
That's
4 years old. Let's read about some sword fights.
Yeah, buddy.
Good night, kids.
Yeah, because he was borderline psychopath too. You either read it as he was either very good at his Zen, or and his sort of strict detachment, or his sort of being able to separate himself from those things. Or he just didn't have those feelings. And he was like, why would you do that? That's inefficient. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And
he was proving it.
Right. I mean, who's better at killing people than psychopaths?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's what they do, right? But he could have also been a really good guy who had all those emotions and had the feelings, and also from a young age started to bump into how he could channel and manifest those things in a way that's productive, and then could also write it down for future generations, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to get their mind around your first fight being when you're 12 and it's with a sword and against a grown man. Because it was something like that.
He brained him. Yeah, he was like 12 or 13 and he smoked that dude. Yeah.
And then later on, he was like, I don't even need a sharp sword. I'll just use a wood sword.
Yeah.
And I'll still fight people with whatever they want to use. And he was smashing skulls like crazy.
Yeah. There's historical precedent sort of left and right for him using a bokken, which is the wooden sword, or using his sheath, the saya, to, he would use that in the offhand. And then at some point he was like, why don't I just run both swords at the same time? And that's how his sword school, set of techniques and stuff sort of came about. But it's because he was like, well, why don't you just do that? Why don't you just run both and, go get some?
Yeah, I think it's hard to find those schools. I think there's still some in Japan, very few of them.
Yeah,
teaching his school of two swords. But yeah, I had that weird segue into the Kali. One thing that I was thinking about, because today when I went to train, Blake's back was sore, so instead of working on ground stuff, it was like an hour and 45 minutes of just knife fighting. And
yeah, buddy,
that was pretty fun. But we were talking about Kali Wednesday. So how did you get into Kali? How long did you do it? And
I didn't do a lot of Kali class. I did some. So my endeavors in Kali actually started with parkour, which I did when I were a lad. Because, what teenage boy doesn't love to run and jump and climb things? And so I found a group in Bloomington at IU where they did parkour. And I had some friends that went to school there, because I had a friend who was in the Japanese program at IUPUI. Anyway, I got connected with these guys that did parkour. And turns out, and you got a bunch of college-age guys, and they enjoy parkour. Lots of them also do martial arts. Which helps, because I think IU still has the largest collegiate martial arts program in the country.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
I'm pretty sure. I got a buddy of mine that still teaches there. Anyway, so I got connected with those guys, and they were like, "Yeah, man, you gotta come down for seminars and do stuff with us." So I went to some seminars that were not by the university per se, but by the instructors that taught at the university. So we did, they were all, not all of them, but mostly by a man named Dr. Jason Winkle with Martial Concepts, I think was the name of his company. And he did Larry Hartzell, Lineage, Jeet Kune Do, and did some Kali, and I'm trying to think of, those were like the two big influences that I had down there, because I went, the guys that taught me things were named Christian Rao, Brian Pike, and Adam Rector, and I still train with Adam on odd occasion. We anyway, they sort of had, them and some other people down there had an operation that they called the Danger Room, and so I would get done teaching class from my sensei up here. I was like 15. In Indiana, you can get your motorcycle only license. Couldn't drive a car, but I had a crotch rocket, and so I'd get done teaching class at noon, jump on my bike, fly down to Bloomington, somewhere in there, grab like a small bite to eat, and then be in class at the Danger Room at like 1 or 1:30, and I just do whatever it was that we were doing in class, which was usually like maybe 10 people. It was a small operation, but it was good times. And that was sort of like, learn some stuff in a seminar, come home, bring it back to my karate buddies, my buddy Ben. Oh, Ben. We would just train all the basic stuff that I got from seminars. It was really good when I got to drag him to seminars with me, because then we both like sort of retained different things, came back home, practiced, beat the crap out of each other, and then went back down and still had it, and like had a base to build on, even though we didn't have quite the daily training that you would normally get like if you went to a school. And so that's sort of how I did that. And I at the time in my karate, there was one of my instructors at the dojo I trained at in Plainfield. His name was John Hillman, and he did Kali like real intensive. Like, I have no idea how much he actually did. I just know that he was really good. And he just like in a couple of classes sort of like really informed my view of like, especially like knives and sticks. And I was like, oh man, I need to learn more about this. So I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 years, that was sort of like my love affair was Kali and Jeet Kune Do. The little snippets of it, and then you do those things and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much of that there was in karate.
Yeah, it is cool to see the overlap and what works, and what I liked about like the bit of Kali and the Jeet Kune Do that I've done. I think there's like some, like you ask like these 5 different Jeet Kune Do guys what the real Jeet Kune Do is, and of course it's what they do and not what the other guy that does. Because Bruce Lee said this, he didn't say that. So it's like there's this, but it's like, all right, well, what can you do? Do you think you're just gonna like stand there and do like sensitivity drills in a real fight? It's not gonna look like that.
Well, that's why it's a drill, man. A drill is an exercise to develop a process, a specific aspect of fighting, right? That's what drills are for. So I don't know. That's where people misplace kata,
Yeah, knowing why you're practicing what it is that you're practicing is
key.
Is key. Yeah. Speaking of key,
oh Jesus,
there's the other. So before we hit record, we were talking about key and some maybe like misconceptions, myths. Where does reality meet? Like where does the myth meet reality? I guess because you can see these, like you read about these stories of even like I think even like Musashi. So you have
people saying that he was 7 foot tall and had the strength of 10 men, and
yeah, and even that like when he would go up like with his sword, like there were some people, I guess, like in his later years that they're like, yeah, you know what, there's no opening. So it's like he's projecting his ki in such a way that they realize there is no opening, and if there's not an opening, you don't want to fight. And there's like so like what's your view of like ki? How can you, is it real? What is, if so, what is it? How do you use it?
I mean, at least on Musashi's front, there's something to be said for like when you step across the line from this guy and that he is that he's killed the last 30 guys before you. And it's like
with a stick.
Yeah. Sometimes with a stick, sometimes with a spear or a jite or whatever other stuff that he decided to use that day. Like,
or
yeah, that's the most famous one, right? But like when that this dude, like, he has the track record, it's like, hey Ryan, you're gonna go step in the ring with, I don't know, Conor McGregor's about our size.
Yeah.
Like, how's that gonna feel?
I'd be I'm not like a nervous guy, but I think I would be.
Yeah. So I think at least Musashi had some of that going for him. But also, I mean, I know that I've had the feeling of stepping across the line from somebody in competition, in the dojo, all those feelings where you're either like, I've got this, or you're like, oh, I don't know, buddy. This one could be rough. And you definitely sort of get that feeling from people. And then sometimes those are wrong. I think it was, I think it was C.S. Peirce. Charles Sanders Peirce. Awesome American philosopher. Anyway, I think it was him who spoke about minute perceptions. All those like little tiny things that like your subconscious sort. At least this is how I interpreted it. I think it was him. I could be wrong. So how your brain sort of picks up like little things that you could explain if you stop to explain them, but they're more the stuff that you feel rather than think. And I think it's those things that we get off of somebody else, whether it's from their posture or from kind of how they set up or the look in their eyeballs or like the complete lack of heart rate because they are calm and they are going to kill you. I've got, we'll say an acquaintance who is like a legit world champion in karate, in point karate. But like will also still scramble your brains because he's a little bit shorter than me, but he is blindingly fast and can do the same thing to you over and over, which is frustrating. So then the second time you go to fight him, the next tournament rolls around, you're both there and you're like, all right, you got a plan for him and you do a bit better, but he still beats you because he's a world champion. There's, I think you get some of those feelings.
So, is that are you talking about like ki? Like to go, like.
No. I mean, I think when people use words like that, they're trying, like when you talk about posture, you're not just talking about like the alignment of somebody's spine. You're talking about how they position themselves and how they, like you're talking about some of the emotions that they convey. Like if somebody's slouched over and they're kind of, oh, I'm not feeling so good, or I'm kind of defensive, or like if they get their shoulders back and get their face in yours, like that's all posture. But it also all says different things. I think when people are, I think using words like ki and energy in those ways, people are looking for like a broader set of things to talk about than they sort of have words for. So we use this thing, and that's why there's a lot of, oh, well, ki is this and ki is that. And well, it's because it's sort of all of those things, because we're trying to get at a sort of vague phenomena that we can all kind of point to, but don't, nobody's ever put hard limits on what it is. Like, do I think that you can pull your hands off to the side of your ribs and then put out candles 15 feet across the room? No. Can you? No, I don't. That's nonsense. But I think there is something to be said for like the presence that you feel when you're with somebody really good, like you with your jits instructor. Me when I roll with you some days, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting it today. So I think there is something to be said for that, but I wouldn't I wouldn't put anything supernatural onto those terms. Yeah,
it is kind of hard to, I've been like reading about this stuff, studying this stuff for like over 20 years. I got my first yoga book when I was 15. I'm almost 39. And so I've been reading about like all these mysterious people, and like the Tai Chi master that could just like touch you on the shoulder and you'll go flying 40 feet. Well, there's even more people practicing Tai Chi now. Show me. And you can see videos, but they look pretty fake. And then when you have like Boss Rutan has done some funny things where he's like, okay, you're a no-touch knockout master, go ahead. And then like, oh, I don't want to make, the guy's like, oh, I don't want to, hurt you or anything. He's like, I'm fine. He's like, I've been doing this, I've been fighting for a long time. It's cool. I'm not going to do anything back. Go ahead. Knock me out without touching me.
Oh, the best one of those, man. There's a video of this. Jesus, George Dillman, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's the worst of them, right?
Yeah.
He, anyway, there's this wonderful video of him. They call him the skeptic, right? And this guy who's sort of in the same boat we're in. Like, man, if you can knock me out without touching me, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to start training with you tomorrow. Like, I'll be there. Because, I mean, especially like if you wanted to go into law enforcement or something like that, if you could do that, that would be like the golden ticket.
Yeah, it would be very convenient to not have to get your knees scraped up when you fight somebody.
Yeah, or tase them or baton them or shoot them or whatever. Like, that would make life a lot easier. You know, you're just like, key blast them and they fall over and you can cuff them. That's the particular example that I think would be really useful for that. Anyway, he's in this video and he's, you know, got his hands a centimeter off of this guy's head and the guy's got his eyeballs closed. And he's talking about how he's like, well, you know, he didn't believe enough. You know, he wasn't willing to believe. And it's like, man, my karate works on you whether you want to believe it or not. Like, if I front kick you and elbow you, like, you're going to know something's up.
Yeah.
And the best part is then at the end of it, he's like, well, you know, if he lifts his one toe versus the other toe, it changes the direction of, like, the polarity of your ki or whatever.
I saw this video, yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, or he might have had his tongue on the roof of his mouth instead of laying down in his mouth or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, you hit somebody with Gyakutsuki and it doesn't make any difference. You know, with your cross, it doesn't matter. Like, you hit them good and hard. You've done your training beforehand. You've got some explosiveness, some good timing. You put in your time on the Makiwara and you hit somebody and they fall over like cold. Like, you know, or not when knocked out of them, cracked ribs. Like, pick your injury of choice, but like, it just works.
Yeah, it's yeah, you can prove it, and like the thing is, like with guys like Dillman, you know, like they become their own victim. Like the BS artist becomes his own victim, and then it's like, and then what? You spent the majority of your life. He could have been like, I think he maybe even started out as like a real karate guy who could really fight, but I don't really know that for sure. But I think he was at least punching and kicking to some degree. But then somehow, like, this mysterious, the 80s were tough on martial arts, and like the 70s and the kung fu movies, which I think are cool. I like them. I like fantasy in my martial arts movies too. Mortal Kombat movies. I don't need everything to be super practical. Because if you look at like the movies these days where it is like real stuff, it's like you might as well watch the UFC. It's going to look better. So you want your movie. I want my movie to be a little bit fantasy. But yeah, like Dillman, like, yeah, it's just, I saw
and like there's a line in there somewhere, right? Like, spinning back kicks both look wicked cool, and also you can break all of somebody's ribs with one. Yeah. Like, done properly, you know, but it's got its time and its place. It's not like the old kung fu movies where you're whipping out the 540s at people, you know, because that's an awesome fighting technique. I mean, if you were to land one, it's like some of the stuff you see in like those awesome Taekwondo demonstrations, you know. Like, man, if you can hit somebody with that massive, like, flying spinning hook heel, you will shatter every bone in their face. But, like, really halfway through your flight to them, they're going to tackle you and they're going to leg lock you. And that's going to be it.
Yeah. So, like, getting back to the key, well, like in like the Chinese system, there's like heaven chi, or like there's weather. So weather is energy chi. Mm-hmm. So you can have that, like, there's really weather, and there's really, you know, that kind of stuff. But like, what do you think about like with acupuncture, the meridians, and like Dillman's on the, you know,
Dillman's on another planet.
He's a proven fraud. But do you think there is something to, like, maybe not like the dim mock, like the death touch, but like if you punch me in the side of my shoulder, you could hit me pretty hard and it might hurt, but it'll be okay. If you hit me with that same force in my solar plexus, I'm going down. You're gonna knock the wind out of me. So there's like
yeah,
but
that's because your diaphragm is there, and like all you've got under your shoulder, like you've got some bones and some nerves and
it's
some
all structurally supported.
yeah.
Yeah, and so do you think like acupuncture? Do you think that that's real? Do you think the meridians are real, or that you could attack them, or is it all just you think it's baloney?
Meridians, I'm on the baloney page just because there's not. Man, I don't know enough about acupuncture. I just don't. I don't know enough to say anything interesting about it. I do know that every time I've seen somebody that did something that was supposedly a meridian thing, like if I put some force on your wrist here and on your elbow here, in this way, well, sure, that lines up with the meridian thing, but it's also your radial and ulnar nerve that you're attacking with your knuckles with some serious force, like you're doing gunting, you're doing, limb destructions, right? Like, you're just not, like, you don't have the anatomy and physiology to explain what's going on, which makes sense at a time when people didn't have, like,
Grey's Anatomy to
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And in that day and age, that sort of thing makes perfect sense. You're like, hey, I don't quite know how this works, so I'm going to work up a theory on how this works. That's what you do, right? Because we're human. But if you've got, like, we know better now. You can say, hey, man, sometimes when the hand's coming in, you can brush your knuckles into these things, like if it's a slow, sloppy punch, or just because, like, the arm floats out there a little bit too far, you can attack that and get a result, like, now. And that also gives you a place to follow up with your side hammer fist and your left cross. That makes really good sense to me. We just shouldn't use those terms. Like we should say things for what they are and say, hey, we do these things that we call limb destructions because that's sort of like the traditional name for it. But really all we're doing is we're smashing some nerves in your arm to give us a little opening to hit you with something harder. That makes a lot of sense to me, but we need to say it in those terms. Nobody ever questions you like, yeah, man, you bang my funny bone like that. It hurts. It hurts real bad. That's where I think the silliness starts to come in, is when people, hang on to those things as opposed to just learning some good A&P.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of that stuff, like the Dimmock stuff, or like the different meridians striking this way. And it's like I never really, like I'd get all the books. I've probably had almost every single martial arts book from the library, and I've bought tons of other ones. But it's like I could never quite get into it. But like one thing that I kind of have proven in myself was the microcosmic orbit, where you, like we were talking about this before the show, where you like pull up the like anal sphincter, and which is a good thing to do for like whether you're like lifting weights, you want to do that, like you clench your glutes and you pull up the anal sphincter, and that way like to get away from or to avoid hemorrhoids and stuff like that. So there's this very scientific provable thing that a lot of powerlifters do, and then like the ones that don't can end up getting hemorrhoids and stuff. But when I
crapping themselves in the middle of competition.
Yeah, but when I do that, and there's like a little bit more to it, but after like Zen meditation, the way my Jujitsu teacher taught me, I can feel that energy go from like the base of my spine up to my brain. It like stops at the third eye spot, and then it goes down the front. Now I can feel it go up to the third eye spot and stop, and then it kind of like fades for me. I have felt it go down the front also, but the going up the spine, I can feel that. So it's like I can't prove that to you, but I've proven that myself. But the meridian stuff, I'm still like, I haven't proven that to myself. I mean, I can read a book and maybe sound smart, but I haven't really proven that one. And I've had acupuncture done, and I wanted to like it, but it was a gift, and I really wanted to like it, and I wanted some experience, and I was open to it, and it didn't work for me.
The thing with that is like, it's like ibuprofen, right? Ibuprofen just sort of works, You don't have to want to like it. You don't have to. You take 400 milligrams and it helps get rid of the ache in your knee or helps bring down your fever. You know, because it does that vasodilation, opens all your blood vessels up. So that's sort of like the thing where it gets weird for me, you know, like I'm not going to say that you're not feeling the things that you're feeling. I am going to question the cause of them, you know.
What would you like? Do you have a?
I do not have an alternate theory.
Okay.
I do not. You know, it's not something that I know enough about to, make for you an informed guess, right? I'm sure that there is somebody out there that has some at least a cursory look at it, but I don't know, man. You know, that's not on that one. You know, my A&P is some time removed, but I remember the structural kinesiology part of it. You know, I remember where nerves and blood vessels and muscles and bones are. You know, and I remember how those things, you know, sort of interact because I wanted it for my karate. You know, I wanted to know those things so that when I was teaching somebody how to do a front kick, if they wanted to know a bit more, I could tell them a bit more. You know, and also for my own knowledge, that was just stuff that I was interested in because you can't do martial arts if you don't have a body. You know, so
yeah, it makes sense. It's both how to heal people and destroy. So if you know where these weak connections are and you're hitting them, or these nerve endings, and you can take a kick somebody in the leg, and then they can't use their leg for a couple seconds.
Oh yeah.
Then that's
right, but that's
quite
because
valuable.
You're smashing the muscles there, and you're, you know, putting some real shock to your femoral nerves and things that. Makes good sense. That's not, well, if I touch you here, there, and there, then about 3 p.m. tomorrow. Well, no, 3 p.m. in 4 years, so that we'll have forgotten and you can't test this.
Yeah.
You're going to puke.
Yeah,
it's just nonsense. Funakoshi in his book, you know, Karate Do, My Way of Life, his autobiography, in the, I don't remember exactly when he wrote that, but, you know, in his book on, his long life in karate, toward the beginning, he takes 2 pages out of, you know, it's a 90 or 100 page book, maybe. It is not a long book. He takes 2 full pages, and in the translation that I have by, which is the most common translation, is by Oshima? Crap, I can't remember the translator's name. Anyway, big Shotokan Karate of America guy. Very important. The title of this subsection is Recognizing Nonsense. You know, and he goes, could it have been that back in the day, you know, this is Funakoshi talking, me paraphrasing, you know, the old masters did some really cool and also ridiculous things. Yes, I guess that's possible. But today, you know, you don't have people, I think the example that he uses, people disfiguring their hands by lots and lots of training, you know, in the sand, in the gravel, in the rocks, so that they can stab their hand through a guy's chest. No. If you're Shinjo Kiyohide, who's the guy, the top level dude in Uechiru, I think. Yes, you can see that dude snap 3 1-inch pine boards with his fingertips. His fingertips also point, you know, 10 or 15 degrees off, because I'm sure that he's broken the one at some point. But
yeah.
That's more a demonstration of having some good conditioning and then really darn tough fingertips. That's not. He still has normal hands. He's not gonna put them through your chest. You know what I mean? There's a line in there. You know, there's something to be said for really good hard body stuff and really good strength and conditioning. Those things can carry you a long way. But at the point where you're saying, yes, I'm going to put this through your sternum, pull out your heart, play with it and put it back before you hit the ground, it's like, I think you're trying to sell me some bullshit, man. And Funakoshi talked about that, and like, so long ago.
What year was that?
I don't remember when he wrote that book.
Is this 100 years old or?
No,
or less than that.
He talks about. I can't remember.
Was he like Bruce Lee? And...
Oh goodness, yeah.
Yeah. So
Funakoshi was around. I have to look. Give me a second. Funakoshi was around. I want to say like early to mid 1900s.
Okay.
I don't remember precisely. Give me 1 second. Gichin.
Yeah, the guys that are willing to, we can see how it could get exaggerated. First of all, you're trying to get students, and a lot of like when these were like secret schools of jiu-jitsu, like my school of jiu-jitsu is not going to share openly with your school of jiu-jitsu. You got to prove yourself that you're not going to just.
Funakoshi was 1868 to 1957.
Okay,
that's when he was around.
And so you can see, like, if I just like start telling you about my jiu-jitsu teacher, I can tell you all kinds of cool stuff, the way you can throw people, what it feels like, and the key, you can like feel it, whatever that is, the presence somehow. Like you can feel somebody like behind you or looking at you. What is that? Okay, so that's something that almost everybody has experienced. You can feel somebody looking at you. What is that? Could that be ki? We don't have a good word for it, so we can call it ki. So we're affected by, or like the way that you like look at somebody and then it scares them. Well, all I had to do was look at you in a particular way. Like maybe it's my calmness that is more scary than my mean face. Like you want to fight me, and I'm looking at you like you can try to do that, but I'm just gonna smash you. And then it'll be like, and then your heart rate goes up. You start having like all these like
physiological responses.
Yeah, these physiological. So is that key? Like what are we talking about? But yeah, when we had like sometimes they ask like when you were, well, you're 24, 23. So yeah. Like all this experience in your age is really cool. So you weren't watching the Ultimate Fighting Championship from the beginning, then?
No,
because you were just
I've seen
born.
some of those old fights, but yeah, no, I wasn't watching them like as they were coming out or anything. No.
Yeah, so like, was there a time that like you would like be watching those and be like, oh, am I wasting my time with karate? Because now there's more karate guys and they're doing other things too, and like you could argue what even karate means. You can, because karate has takedowns, right, and some ground fighting and some. Like, was there ever a time when you were like, I'm going to quit karate and do this instead?
No, there wasn't. There was a brief moment when I got really frustrated as like a blue belt. I've been training for a few years and just like, and I thought about like switching schools, but I never thought about getting out of karate, because like done properly without the garbage in it, karate works. You learn, the it should be like world class punchers and kickers, right? But then there should be a lot of clinch fighting. You should know and understand, like you see it in the old kata, especially like in Naihanshi and in the Goju-ryu kata, like Seipai and Seiyunchin, and like there's lots of grappling stuff, but it's not grappling stuff. It's clinch fighting stuff. It's the stand-up grappling, right? It's where you have, underhooks and overhooks, and where you control by the wrists and the elbows and the neck. You start to see those techniques, and they're tucked away in our kata, right? And it's like that's because those things work. Like you can arm drag somebody into a rear naked choke standing, right? You can also arm drag somebody into a kidney punch, right? The kata, like if you're looking at Naihanshi, right? They might only do that the one time on the one side, But as it's best said, if you ever go take a seminar with Ian Abernathy, maybe it wasn't him. I think it was him, though. The kata assumes you're not an idiot, right? If you get that dominant position, you're past them. You got the arm drag over there. You got the hard pull, right? That's what that hand is for. If you pull that thing over there, and then you can really crack that little body hook in. Don't just do it once, man. You do it until they start doing something else. Until they demand that you maneuver against them again. So you might get 1 or 2 or 3 shots before this person really is like, oh my goodness, I got to figure something else out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how did I even get there? Man, I went someplace else.
Yeah, I was asking if there was a time you wanted to stop because you were seeing it as ineffective in UFC because it kind of went that way.
Well, it did, but also the karate that you see that, the things that I see in the UFC that what I would call that I think of as karate are when you see a guy guy shoots in for a double leg and you see the guy structure with the forearm up across his neck. We would call that technique a shuto-uke, right? A knife hand, right? But this one, the hand that, if you know what a shuto-uke looks like, the hand that's at the stomach is usually an overhook over one arm. The other one is across the guy's neck, and you splay the feet out, right? That looks like karate to me. When you see, sometimes you'll see some really good foot sweeps and stuff, that's karate to me. When you see a lot of the tactics, you see this, right? One hand extended out to the side and then a big elbow into that hand. You see that in kata all the time. And that's what karate looks like to me. You just have to put the other person's head there first, right? And you see John Jones do that and just gets a hold of the dude's head and goes boom, 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 boom. The kata assumes you're not an idiot.
Yeah.
That's what karate looks like to me. So, when you see guys like Stephen Thompson throwing, spinning wheel kicks and stuff, that's awesome. And that is an aspect of karate that people do. Right, and that's something that we see, and it's in point karate, and it's in kickboxing, and it's in MMA. But that's not predominantly what I think of as karate. That's not, and it's certainly not traditional karate. To me, traditional karate should have good striking, lots of clinch fighting, wrist locks, arm bars, throws, chokes, takedowns. There's a picture of Funakoshi, standing here with his arms crossed, and one set of students on the ground grappling and another student finishing a hip throw, and he's the founder of modern karate. That's what karate is to me. Karate isn't just okay, we do some lines and some basics to get good at basics, and we do some kata that we never attach back to how we fight with our friends, and then we do some sort of competition style kumite. Those are aspects of karate, and there's a lot of value in them. But you have to be clear about what you're doing. That, if you can use that sort of karate for self-defense, for fighting, you've connected some dots that a lot of people don't ever manage to connect. Those things should all be the lines between where your basics and your kata and your bunkai, right? How you use the kata, and all of your self-defense and fighting stuff. All of those lines should get mashed up and blended together regularly, because you don't do one to get good at just that thing. They're all part of the process of hey, we're going to learn sort of a semi-organized way of fighting with people. We have to teach you that somehow. And those are all aspects of it, Not to say that you can't learn awesome timing and distance from practicing point kumite. Because, if your job is to not let the other person hit you, and your job is to hit them, and it's for points, but, usually there's still a fair amount of contact. There's still some physical consequences.
Yeah.
You learn good distance and timing, and good evasion. You learn how to not get hit. Tell me that's not an important skill.
Yeah, I think it's like, and even after since I've been doing this for so long, I'm still try to keep that white belt mentality. Like I've never done this before, and of course I'm able to pick things up fairly quickly when I'm working with Blake, who I knew him 20 some years ago, and then we got reconnected a few months ago and started training at least once a week, and he has like this different look because he's so good at so many different things, like instructor level at so many different styles.
Yeah.
With it's like as a and he looks at it through what he calls like the Jeet Kune Do eyes kind of thing. I don't know if that's exact words, but so when he's a second degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he looks at it from a Jeet Kune Do point of view. We're looking at principles and these stuff like that. So it's not just like, okay, I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because he said he didn't even want a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. He wanted a purple belt, because once you get to purple belt, then that's when you start really understanding. So for his purposes, he just wanted to get to purple belt, and he just I guess accidentally stuck around.
Put another like 10 years into it to get his second dan. Yeah.
And ends up being like an instructor at the school at Marcelo's, which is, I just went to the school once, but it's really good school. But like Blake's way is just like this, and it's also like, how much is enough of this? So you did Kali. Well, how much is enough Kali before you should move on? Or like Wing Chun. Wing Chun has a lot of good stuff, but it's like you better hope you're fighting another Wing Chun guy if that's all you're gonna do.
Well, I mean,
so like this, like it's like seeing like these, what's actually practical. So you're looking at the karate, like if somebody grabs somebody by the back of the head, starts elbowing him in the face, you're like, oh, that's a karate guy, or something like that. Where,
well, it's just like if you look, if you look at a given martial art before it became a sport, the goal is almost always self-defense and fighting.
Yeah.
Jack Dempsey said, the point of boxing is not just this sport thing that we do, right? But it's so you can learn to defend yourself.
Yeah, it's an American martial art.
Well, not even
like not just American,
but like Western. Yeah, he was an American boxer, right? But like that was a thing that he believed, right? Because boxing used to have, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, overhand, all that stuff, but that's because those are good ways to hit people. They also had elbows and headbutts and knees and like hip throws, because that's a good way to throw someone.
Mm-hmm.
It had all of those things. It emphasized the hands, but it had those things, right? Now you see karate, and people know, just like point karate is like the mid to long range, straight line hand technique, big round kicks, spinning kicks, side kicks, not even usually ever a front kick. I think the best use of a front kick is to blast the back leg out from under somebody when you're in the clinch. You're clinched up with somebody, and like if you get a little bit of space, if you can front kick their back leg, they'll almost always like plant and drop weight on you, and then you're like, I've got you now, and you uchimata them or whatever, like that's when you see karate, as like a whole karate, not like the little 8% sliver of it that you see in competition karate.
Yeah, there's a really good video. I think we talked about it before. It's called Budo, The Art of Killing.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows the karate guy, and they're practicing on hardwood floor, and they're doing big throws. Like,
yeah, buddy.
You would think it's like, it looks a little bit different than if you're like looking at a judo class.
Yeah.
But they're doing throws. We'll just put it that way. And they're landing on hardwood floors.
That's body conditioning, man.
Yeah, and they're landing like a little bit different than you would land in a judo class. A lot of it is like if you're doing a shoulder throw, then they want their feet to land first instead of like if you're on a mat You can even land judo style on hardwood or anything, meaning like your whole side of your body absorbs the impact instead of like a particular spot and like, not your head and
not your
elbows. But anyways, it shows like this guy who's the karate guy, but he's doing stuff that I think a lot of people here don't really think would have as karate. It's like that's some of the maybe like what was missing in some schools, but not what you've done.
Yeah,
but there's like I mentioned, the other karate guys that I had trained with before was like even like with striking, and I always did striking, but not like as my main, or I did like hard sparring. It was like karate black belt. So what? They're not doing anything against me.
Yeah,
I can still punch and kick them, and I have. And I was mainly learning it at a jujitsu school.
Yeah.
And then like sparring with buddies.
But you were learning striking at a jujitsu school, right? You were doing a more whole art, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the traditional Japanese jujitsu, kind of like the traditional karate, includes the whole thing.
Yeah.
And because with a lot of our jujitsu setups, where before you throw them, you kick them in the groin or you punch them in the chin. Before you do an arm lock, you punch them in the chin, you kick them in the groin, and it's going to make your arm lock work a lot easier.
Oh man, that's like when we come to class, you know, and we grapple, and sometimes you're like, you know, bring your gloves and your mouth guard, and I'm like, oh yeah, buddy, my jits is going to be better tonight.
Yeah, it should include like all of that. It's hard to, and like there was. Like, so separation of like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which doesn't need to get into that whole thing of how that happened, but like why is the Brazilians now opening up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools in Japan? It's like, why are they so much better at the ground fighting? And it is a thing that they've got really good at. You had this family that was like, okay, we'll fight anybody in the world. Just all you have to do is come over to our school. We'll fight you, and it's under, you know, when you quit, you quit. We're not, you know, it's a fight, and you sign the release. You don't want to sign the release. That's Hicks and Gracie. You don't want to sign it? Fine. Then let's go in the back room and see what shakes out. And so they really did a lot, and that the Gracies, that, you know, you're allowed to punch them and kick them, and they'll still do their jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, exactly.
And, there's a lot like missing, I think, from like what kind of school are you going to? If you're going to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sports school, which I may be describing it wrong, but like Marcelo's. Okay, well, if you learn Marcelo's system, which I think is, I'm not an expert on all the different schools of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but man, his is you're thinking of striking. Striking is kept in mind when you're doing this stuff. So, but there's like some, it seems like it's not including the striking. But there was like for instance, there was a cop that was coming to not the jiu-jitsu class that I teach, but the one I was going to, the traditional Japanese, and he was going to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. And then he came to our school. And then he went back to another Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, and then he came back, and he said that he likes the Japanese style better because he's a cop, and he doesn't want to play guard with a gun belt. So for his purposes, he doesn't need to be playing sport jiu-jitsu. He needs to be playing, you can kick to the groin, you can punch, you can eye gouge, you can do pinky locks. If somebody's choking you at our school and you bend their pinky back and they let go, well, you just got out of the choke. That's okay. You don't want your pinky bent backwards? Then let go of the choke. And so there's like this, so people need to understand, why are you at that school?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's something that a lot of people get misplaced on, just in their martial arts in general. You know, a lot of people go to a karate class because they want like a community. There's some social stuff, but they also want a little bit of exercise, and they're, you know, a lot of places have like adult classes and kids classes combined. You know, like they want a thing that they can do with their kid, or, you know, like with another loved one, or you know, a lot of people join martial arts for those sorts of reasons, and that's great. It's awesome that we can use our martial arts to bring people together like that, but you got to be honest about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say, and like, this is the most effective thing that we can teach you for self-defense.
Don't use your Tai Chi in a street fight.
Yeah, it's like that, and there's a lot of karate schools that are that way, just like if you're doing, throwing and grappling, you've never thought about like somebody throwing a left cross and, knocking you out or staggering you, like that's going to really rattle your jits, if you've never thought about it. If you keep it in mind and you make the fight that you're about to get into or you're getting into about seeing the fight coming, being able to plan for it a little bit, maybe get out of it preemptively, or you can make it not about striking, because you have good timing and you can close the distance and get a good takedown, and then you can like hang out with them in an armbar or in a position of control, right? And like, hey man, we don't need to be doing this anymore. Then you can make it about your jiu-jitsu. Just like if it's your karate and you've never done any takedown defense because you've never thought about somebody like doing a blast double leg on you, you're hosed. You're completely hosed.
Yeah, and if you think that you can stop the takedown without practicing it, you're mistaken. You could be a football player. If you fight a football player who had no wrestling class ever, and you've been going to karate for 10 years, and you think that your punch is going to keep him from taking you down, if you've got a well-timed punch, you may knock him out, but he also may knock you out on the way to the ground by smashing you into it. Like... Yeah, definitely. And even as like mostly a jiu-jitsu guy, which, of course I like strikes and everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to fight a street fight on the ground for sure, because you don't know like his, the guy's girlfriend. I don't want to get in a street fight at all. I've never really been one to get into fights.
Boots, blades, biting, and buddies. I don't remember who said that, but those are the reasons to not be on the ground ever if you can avoid it.
So you can avoid it, get up, but yeah, you have to have that takedown defense. So you said something like your exercise. So like what kind of you're big into like CrossFit, and so like what kind of like strength and conditioning do you think is best for martial arts? You mentioned like Hojo Undo, which
Hojo
is
Undo, yeah.
I've gotten a couple books of that from the library where they show like they're lifting different stones and these things that look kind of like kettlebells, and they're
like nigirigame, and then like they've got the chiishi, which is like I don't even remember what the translation for that is, but they're a big rock on the end of a stick.
Oh yeah, it looks kind of like what they're maces are getting real popular.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
So it looks kind of like a mace.
I was thinking like a little 8-pound sledgehammer. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what the old masters did, but if we're being totally honest, they also like sports science is at a place now where that has never been before, right? Like if you look at just how freaking strong and fast we can make people, like at the top of the pyramid, people that go to the Olympics, people that are world champion powerlifters and weightlifters, like it's ridiculous how strong those people are, just how capable they are physically. So like, why aren't we doing the things that they're doing? But for our training age, right? Most people are not ever going to be anywhere close to half as strong as Hafthor Bjornsson, Yeah. Like, you just don't get to be that way. But, why shouldn't we all lift heavy things? I don't know. So I don't do a lot of like the traditional Hojo Undo, but to me, like I got into CrossFit and started doing Olympic lifting, weightlifting, because I wanted to make my karate better. I wanted that other thing. Like I've always been I've been athletic, right? That's the thing that I'd say. I'm not, particularly strong or, awesome conditioning or anything like that. But like I can run and I can jump, and I'm well coordinated. I can do those things. So like I can walk on my hands, those sorts of things. What I felt like I was missing, even though like if you've got good efficient technique, that's like your It's like your suspension in your car, that handles how you put power on the road. But if you got a bigger gas tank and a more fire-breathing engine, that's better still, So I got into it, and I did a lot of CrossFit for like 6 or 8 months. And that was really good. I love the way that CrossFit makes you feel. Because you can feel that your metabolism is just like cranking all the time. And you've always got endorphins pumping through you if you do it like 4 or 5 days a week. And you're just like, oh man, you feel great. But then I was like, man, I'm not, I started CrossFit and like my back squat was like 295 or 305 or something like that. On my then like 160 pound frame. Anyway, I was doing that and then I was like, this is great. Like I don't gas out when we're doing like 40-minute days of kumite, and we're sparring and we're beating the tar out of each other. I don't really feel it then, but like I've also like I'm not really any stronger. I'm like, okay, now I can squat 315. Well, then I started doing the Olympic lifting, which at our place is a I do it for the strength and power aspect of it, right? Weightlifting as a sport, it's the snatch and the clean and jerk, right? But then all the stuff that comes with it, back squat, front squat, overhead squat, tall jerks, purse jerks, push press, all of those exercises, power cleans, they're about how you put force onto an object. Striking and grappling are about how you put force onto a person. Is a very applicable thing. Especially, I like Olympic lifts because there's stuff that you do in karate that you don't see in some other things. Like we like to plant our back heel a lot and drive through the back leg into our punch without coming up onto the ball of the foot. Because we're looking for I didn't know it then, right? But we're looking for the posterior chain engagement. We're looking for driving through the heels like you would on a deadlift or on a clean. And we're looking for the stability, right? You don't do a squat and push as much weight up through your heels as you can on like a squat you do not do a squat or a deadlift and put as much force through your feet as you can through the balls of your feet. You don't do it. You do it through heels. Those sorts of things, and then like how you extend and how you pull with your lats, and those are the things that I was like, and they really, really informed my karate. But I didn't know it until I'd been doing some Olympic lifting for like 8 or 9 months or whatever I'm at now, and I've put like 90 pounds on my back squat, which I feel directly when I'm fighting, especially with bigger people. When you get somebody that's bigger than you, but you're stronger than them.
That is a sweet feeling.
That's oh man, it's so pleasant because I've never been big or strong enough to cheat. I've always had to have good technique because that's how you win when you're smaller. You have to be better. But then when you've like got some horsepower to it, it's like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, I think training methods are getting better. CrossFit used to have a pretty bad reputation for like injuries and bad form, and I think that there's been, I think they like hired the right people and really came around. So like your like clean and jerk looks really good. Your snatches and your squats are all really tight, and I think that there is, like with anything else, that at first they didn't have a high standard to get to be a coach, but then like maybe it's different now.
Well, even to this day, I mean, like I was just talking about it with one of my coaches. Like there's, it's like karate. There's some dojo that are awesome. They're safe. They can make you a mad awesome martial artist if you want to put in the work. And you get all of those things. They're good people. Same is true of CrossFit. You can go some places and everything is safe and everything's well organized and the coaches are really knowledgeable and they can lead by example. Like you see them and they do get their workouts in before or after class, or they take classes from the other coaches, like you see those things and you're like, wow. There's also garbage out there. I heard a story of a coach that came in, pointed to the whiteboard and said, this is what you're doing today, and then dicked around on his phone. Yeah. And so, that's just something I heard. I've not seen that, the couple of CrossFit places that I've been into. And I don't know, man. I think I lucked out that the gym that's close to us is just, they're awesome people. So I think I sort of lucked out that was the place that was close, it was handy, and they also really know their shit. So
yeah, I haven't done a lot of the Olympic lifting. Just where I am, I don't have the bar and the plates and the floor to be able to drop them. But one of the
it's important.
A lot of what I do, yeah. But I do kettlebells are my favorite, but I still do deadlifts and squats. Since my knee injury, I'm back up to a 70-pound squat. Pretty happy about that. No, but
I'm sorry about that, by the way.
It happens. It's no big deal.
I'm the one that heel hooked Ryan and goofed up his knee.
Claiming
sorry.
Responsibility. That was my fault. But anyways, I like kettlebells, and especially the strong first method, and it's super strict. You do not get your certification with bad form. It has a 25% fail rate, and there's strength test. You have to do 100 snatches in 5 minutes with a 53-pound kettlebell. If you weigh more than me, now you have to do the 57-pound kettlebell, or even 62 pounds if you're a heavyweight. And you're whipping it over your head 100 times in 5 minutes with one arm. You can switch hands. But if you get 99, and I saw it happen, then you fail. And you can try again. You can send in a video within a few months. But anyways, with the kettlebells, with the swing and the snatch, and even the clean and jerk, which I think is one of the best exercises, there's the strong first method, to put it simply, is with techniques where there's the relaxation phase. You can do 100 reps. If there's not a relaxation phase, if you're just doing a press, then you're going to do 5 reps or less. So if you're doing squats, then you're not going to do more than 5, because you're trying to build strength, which is tension. And to have maximum tension, if you're getting into the 10 rep range, you just can't hold tension that long. I know you can there's the 20 rep squats and people get or more. And with body weight, I've done 300 body weight squats in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But the kettlebells, anyways, there's that contract, relax. And the founder of the system, Pavel Tsatsouline, wants to apply everything to fighting. Martial arts is important. So if you're doing martial arts, there's, you're about to kick me in the gut, I need to contract. But if I contract for too long, then I'm going to be slow returning. So I need to be able to contract, relax. And that's what doing a snatch teaches you. And if you can't do that fast, then you're not going to pass your test.
Yeah.
So do you think that that's kind of how what you're learning from the Olympic? Because there is that
the power aspect.
Yeah, the power and relaxing, or at least you're changing direction. So you're not just you're trying to pull faster than gravity, right? When you're sinking down into the snatch, if you're doing the full.
Yeah, so I feel like that's one of the places where I had a little bit of a leg up going into Olympic lifting, was because in karate, if you want to hit somebody as hard as you can't be tense. Because if you're tense, you'll be slow. You need to be fast with all of the drive that you can get out of your legs, the most body weight that you can put into it, and the timing to have it all connect and transfer out your hand, right? If you're going to punch somebody as hard as you can, that's what you have to do, right? Also with structure enough that you don't go anywhere, right? That all of the energy goes to them. some of that's breathing, some of it's the actual muscular relaxation, so that when you contract, right, and you snap your punch out, everything fires and lands at the same time, right? Your back leg locks up just in time to put your hip, to drive the hip forward. The breathing is put together so that you're tight through the core, so that your shoulder is well connected to your hip. The mechanics in the arm are just so that you lock out at the same time that all of that energy is getting transferred through your hand. Those are things that I learned from karate that I think help me in weightlifting, but are also reinforced by it, because not that I'm a good weightlifter, I'm not a good weightlifter, but some of the things that I feel like I do well are, where those things transfer between the two activities. And I like Olympic lifting for that aspect of it, of if you're tense, and you don't drive through your legs, or you have things in bad timing. Timing is critical. It's maybe the after distance, the most important thing in fighting, right? The same is true in weightlifting, right? If the bar contacts your body at the wrong time, you lose a lot of power. You lose efficiency. If you extend through your feet too soon, you lose efficiency. If you don't finish the pull with your legs and you pop your hips too soon, you lose efficiency. If you are slow on your elbows, as my coach likes to tell me when I do my cleans, she'll be like, your elbows are so slow. I've never been called slow before weightlifting in my life. So, that's humbling. But if you have slow elbows, you lose efficiency. So you're not.
You're talking about getting them under the bar. So
I'm talking about you push through the feet as you pass the knee, and on a clean, bar starts to contact somewhere about mid-thigh. You hit triple extension through the hip, the knee, and the ankle, and you're starting to get that little bit of, maybe a slight moment of being a little airborne, and you're yanking your own ass under the bar. And when you do that, you want to pop the elbows through fast so that you can be in a good position to squat on the other side and stand the weight up, right? If you take a long time to get under the bar, it means you have to catch lower. It means you don't get that little bit of bounce to have, your stretch shortening cycle or whatever it is to help drive you out of the bottom. So all those things matter, and I like all of the correlations between the two things. Not to say that I don't like the raw strength stuff, because I love to squat and deadlift because I feel it in my karate. One of my favorite things to do, just as a hobby and to be torturous to my students, is I'll go and I'll squat and I'll do triples at 80 or 85%, and then I'll go to teach class. And I'll go do that because then, and I'll do 5 or 7 sets or something like that. I'll get some good excited nervous system stuff going on, because then I go to karate and I'm way fired up and everything is sharp and fast, and such a good feeling.
Yeah, people can there seems to be some confusion over sport specific for martial arts, and I think that it's when you're doing something dynamic, if you're sitting on a chest press machine, it's probably not going to help you a lot. But if you're doing bench press, especially with dumbbells, I can see how that can help your grappling. But just being able to exert force on the object, the direction you want, and understand the correct alignment. So it's we were saying at the beginning, once you know the way, once you see the way, you know it in all things, or
whatever it was Musashi said.
And so it's okay, and then being able to relax, because if you're grappling with somebody, a lot of times the people that are new, they're too tense, they're just hanging on for dear life. And
that's me.
And we're just and we're just like relaxed and like, okay, now your arms are tired, just go ahead and choke, and then it's like, yeah, just relax. That's one of the main things I try to teach people when they're new to grappling is just calm down, just relax and don't squeeze so hard. And then but it takes a while because it's more than just like an intellectual thing. It's physical education, and part of it's like not being nervous in the position, but just like teaching your body how to be like strong in these different positions. So when people say like, oh, all I do is my martial art, that's the best way, strength training doesn't really help, I think
you've never tried strength training.
Yeah, like
that's what that means.
The right way. So we'll start to wrap it up here. Do you have any like closing thoughts on like practical like strength and conditioning training, or final thoughts on martial arts in general?
Man, I think the thing that I think is missing from a lot of strength and conditioning stuff for martial arts is transverse plane motion. We don't twist enough, but that's how you do round kick. It's how you do spinning back kick. It's how you do a cross. It's how you do a big elbow. It's that twist. I think, I know we probably ought to like swing sledgehammers to move tires more rather than flip them. Because if you want to flip a tire, like really you could just do some deadlifts and get most of the same stuff. You get the same out of a press or a push press. If you were to do like try to move a tire 10 feet, like a big tractor tire 10 feet by swinging a sledgehammer at it.
So the tire's laying flat.
Yeah.
And you're taking a sledgehammer to the side of it.
And you're moving it like 4 inches at a time. Maybe.
I like it. I think that's good.
We should try that.
Yeah.
This is just an idea, but like, or if you had something else. I mean, I think that transverse plane stuff is really missing in a lot of strength and conditioning. From what I see. Not knowing, I'm not an expert or anything by any means, but, like, if you're doing some training to, like, kick ass and save lives and stuff, you, probably need thick thighs, and, you'd be able to twist, transfer power through your hips into your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Did Bruce Lee have thick thighs?
Yeah, for a dude that was like 130 pounds, he probably did all right. I don't know.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm one of the non-thick thighed fellows. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's all like the transverse plane stuff. Like one thing that I like, that I'll do with like some clients is on the cable machine. So like if you have the cable machine and you are standing to the side of it, almost like you're going to do like cable crossovers, but instead like you kind of like pull it in towards you, and then you start to twist, and then so you're doing like it's kind of a chopping motion, but it's more of like a punch. So you're kind of going from that like Saturday Night Fever thing just popped into my mind. Like so you're standing like there's a straight line from the handle through your arm through your other shoulder, and then you're pulling it in, and then you're like twisting. So if it's in your right hand, you're pulling it in and twisting to your left. And I think it's probably better than, say, like if you're like laying on a bench and doing flies, because your legs are working also. Yeah. So it's like this whole, you were talking about chains, which maybe we can get into on another episode, like posterior chain, anterior chain. So instead of thinking like, oh, I'm going to work out my pecs, I'm going to work out my biceps, or I'm going to work out my back, it's like this posterior chain. So it's like it's not just like one muscle. Like one muscle by itself doesn't do anything.
Your lats, your hamstrings, your glutes.
Yeah, this whole thing.
Your spinal erectors.
Yeah, the whole like the more advanced people like seem to break muscles down less and less. They need to talk about movements.
Yes.
So that's a good point. So if you teach karate at White Pine Wilderness Academy, Same place I do my strength and conditioning classes, which is how we met through this awesome place.
Yes,
So
sir.
if someone wants to contact you for training, how do they get a hold of you?
My website is toddksd.com. And you can find like my email and maybe my phone numbers up there. You can also go to White Pine website under the I think the community skills section. You'll find my classes, and
yeah, that's whitepinewilderness.com.
yeah. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
They can find you on Tinder and that kind of stuff.
Oh no! Yeah, if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm RICTODD. But I don't post on there a whole lot. I do some stuff. I'll put videos of like very little karate stuff actually, just because when I'm doing karate, I'm usually like doing karate and teaching, and so it's hard to like get videos. Get pictures. But periodically I'll be able to set my phone down and get a video of a deadlift or something like that. So.
Yeah, and one thing I have planned for this podcast really soon is do part of it in video. So like we'll do so long just talking, and then we can go out to the training hall and video it, and then that can go on YouTube also. And so I think that's going to be a really cool feature, because why have all these trainers on just talking when we can
be doing stuff.
When we can be doing stuff. So
be getting after it.
We will leave it at that. If you want to get a hold of me about the show, it's fitnessandconsciousness@gmail.com.